Today, we will look at architectural competitions. We have seen that when a client wants to build and he asks a few architects to make drawings or proposals without paying them for the proposals is not acceptable. And if you make drawings in competition with other architects without receiving any payment for that, even if they are just sketches, that is forbidden under our present dispensation. So, is there a way in which a client can look at the possibilities that different architects may present for a proposal that he has without having to pay for each and every one of them? So, yes, the possibility is there. If the client holds an architectural competition, then architects can compete with each other without getting paid for their work. So that is a big advantage to the client. Obviously, if you hold a competition, you have to do certain other kind of expenses. So finally, it may turn out to be slightly more expensive than simply appoint an architect. But the advantage of conducting a competition is that the client gets to see so many other possible solutions without having to pay for each one of them. Now, how do you ensure that if such a competition is held by the client, it is not detrimental to the interest of the architects who are competing? And for this purpose, the Council of Architecture has made a document called the Architectural Competition Guidelines, and everybody has to stick to those guidelines. In fact, interestingly, in our professional conduct document, the architects are forbidden from competing into architectural competitions which are not approved by the Council of Architecture. So this is some kind of a check. So let's see what are the other advantages of the architectural competition. As I told you, the client gets the benefit, but the architects also get a lot of benefits. So what are these benefits? You see, when a project is to be done, the owner at the most may know a few architects within the city, and he may only consider them. But when it is a competition, then architects from all over, belonging to different age groups, different regions, and different abilities, can all compete and try and get the job. So there is no bar. It is a kind of a open situation where anybody and everybody can compete and showcase their talent. So what happens is that when these competitions are held, the designs that get produced are of a much higher quality because you are throwing your net very wide, and a large pool of architects is available from which you can select the proper design. So that's one big advantage. And for the architects, the advantage is that anybody can take part. Suppose you have just a young architect who has just started practice, and if there is a, let's say, a project of national importance, you would never be considered otherwise for that project as an architect. But if it is an architectural competition, and if you have talent, then you can even bag projects of this size and complexity, and it's a kind of a stepping stone for a very good career. Then the other advantage is that architects who may not win a competition still get the opportunity to conduct some kind of research into projects that otherwise they would not even touch. So they enhance their own ability, hone their own skills by taking part in competitions. This is another advantage to the architects. And thirdly, the most important aspect of competitions is that they are judged by architects. The jury comprises of architects or people who are qualified to interpret the competitors' presentations, and therefore there is less chance that a good, competent architect may be overlooked. So these are some of the advantages of doing the architectural competitions. Now, the first thing that has to be done when a competition is to be held is that you have to create the project brief. Now, what is this project brief? Simply, the intentions of the client are reduced to words, some kind of a report on what is expected, and then all the necessary information that has to be given. Now, before this is made, the promoters have to appoint a board of assessors or the judges. Remember that the judges play a very important role in conduct of any competition. If you have good quality judges, then the quality of the competition itself will be a lot better, because people who are going to compete will look at who are the judges, and if they are people of stature, then it is quite likely that a lot more architects will take part in the competition. So the appointment of assessors is very important, because the assessors not only judge the entries, but they also initially help the promoter in creating the project brief, and also they look at appointment of advisors, if any. Now, what are advisors? You have two kinds of advisors. You have technical advisors. Sometimes a project may require further technical details to be added in the project brief, and for this purpose, the promoters may have to appoint a technical advisor. But more often than not, the most important advisor is the professional advisor. A professional advisor is usually an architect who is appointed by the promoter to generally run the whole competition. He's somebody who is well versed into how competitions are conducted. He knows the procedure well. And this uh, appointment of this professional advisor is very important, because he's the one who not only conducts the entire competition, but he assists the assessors in generally judging the competition. Also, he makes sure that everything that is done is as per the conditions of the competition. So once the professional advisor is appointed, he will draw up the conditions for the competition, and then all this is sent to the council for their approval. Now the council will look at the conditions or the entire proposal for conducting of the competition, and if in their opinion there's anything in the conditions which does not agree with the set standard practices, or if there is anything which is not acceptable, then they may ask the promoters to modify, and once the approval is received from the council, then the competition can be actually started. Now, the board of assessor consists of a number of people. It's an odd number. And very importantly, the assessors, there in the board of assessors, there is a majority of one of architects. That means if there are five assessors, at least three will be architects. Or if there are seven assessors, at least four will be architects. The rest can come from other fields. Also, there is a restriction that at any given time, the promoters cannot have more than two of their nominees on the board of assessors. Now, one of the assessors who's appointed as a head is called a senior assessor. He is the one who is chairing all meetings of the board of assessors. Their job is to look at all the entries which are submitted and submit a written report. Now, it is easily understood that the integrity of the assessors is of extreme importance. If you have good assessors, you will get good results in a architectural competition. Next, let's look at what are the various types of competitions that can be conducted. Obviously, there are two types of competitions. The first one is the project competition, or a competition which is conducted to get actual design solutions for a project. And this is the most commonly conducted competition. In this competition, the winner has to be awarded the job. The winner of the competition must be appointed as the architects, and he will be paid his fees in addition to the prize money that he is paid as per the conditions of the competition. The other kind of competition is an ideas competition. Now, an ideas competition does not necessarily end up into a project, or it is not imperative, or it is not compulsory for the promoters to appoint the winner as the architect, because he's only presenting the ideas. People are only competing with each other through presentation of ideas as to how a very large project can be done. It doesn't have a detailed design. Sometimes projects which involve planning and urban design and other disciplines, you have project rather than a project competition, you have a ideas competition. The good thing about ideas competition is that it allows even students of architecture to take part, since finally it is not going to end up into a project which is to be given to the winner. Even students who are studying in various schools of architecture can take part in these competitions. Now, even for the project competition, there are three very distinct types. The first one is an open competition. Now, in open competition, as the name suggests, any or all architects can participate. There is no bar. Okay. So this is one of the better kinds of competitions where you do not restrict the entry. You allow anybody and everybody to participate. Now, also for certain smaller projects, maybe projects up to 10 lakh rupees or so, which are very small projects, you can have open competitions, but you can restrict the entries from a certain geographical location. For instance, if there is a small competition for some project to be held in the district of Nasik, you could say that only architects practicing in the state of Maharashtra, or architects who have their offices or branch offices in state of Maharashtra only can compete. So this kind of restrictions are sometimes put on very small project competitions. Okay, but generally for larger projects, public projects, open competitions have no restrictions related to who can compete. Okay. Then the second kind of competition is a limited competition. Now, in a limited competition, you carefully choose 4, 5, 6, up to 10 number of architects, and then you invite them to send in their design. Now, when that happens, each of the architect will have to be paid a certain honorarium if he submits the entry. Now, how do you select the architects that have to be invited? Usually, this is done by the promoters in consultation with the board of assessors. So it's not just the architects that are known to the promoter who are invited, but the assessors play a very big role in selecting the number of people who can compete, or the kind of people who can compete. Then there are the third kind of competitions are the special competitions. Now, in special competitions, there are additional disciplines which are involved. Like suppose there is, let's say, a very specialized project of heritage conservation. Then obviously for that you will require entries from a certain specialist oriented firms, or firms which have expertise in conservation. So these are called special competitions. Let's look at what are the eligibility conditions. First of all, anybody who wants to take part in a competition has to be registered with the Council of Architecture for the time being. If there are partners in a firm, all the partners have to be registered with the council. Also, if it is a ideas level competition, then there can be students who are studying in colleges which are approved by the Council of Architecture. They can take part. Then obviously any of the relatives or people connected with either the assessors or the promoters are barred from taking part in competitions. Many times, the competitor may be asked to submit a valid proof of their registration with the council. And if it is a partnership, then even some kind of a document showing that this partnership exists, maybe the copy of the partnership deed. Now, sometimes you may realize that when a competition is declared, people who are not partners with each other permanently may also tie up with each other to take part in a competition. Now, in such cases, it is important that they enter into an agreement to work as partners for that particular competition, and that copy has to be submitted. So these are some of the requirements of the eligibility conditions for taking part in a competition. Now, this next stage is registration of candidates or competitors. For this purpose, what the promoters have to do is advertise, maybe in local newspapers or in any other which way they can, inviting architects to register for a competition. Now, once they start registering, they have to pay certain amount of fees for the purpose of registration. This is also some kind of a deterrent for not making or for not letting too many architects who are not really wanting to compete asking for the brochures or leaflets, etc. So unless you make some kind of a payment, you will not be registered. Now, while you register for a competition, you have to also give all proofs, etc., as I told you, regarding your eligibility. And once your name is registered as a competitor, then the assessors will send you the complete detailed project brief with site plans, drawings, requirements, any other details which may be part of the registration, of the competition. Also, the conditions for competitions, etc. These will be then sent to you. Now, remember that a person can register or a firm can register in his or her name or their name, but this registration is not transferable. You can't say that I have registered, now I want to transfer my registration in somebody else's name. That's not possible. So there is a certain date which is given before which people have to register, and then they are given the project brief. Now, if within the stipulated time, after reading all the papers, etc., you feel that you are not interested in the competition, you can return this and cancel your registration. And in that case, most of the registration fee that you have paid will be returned to you. They will deduct a little bit of money for clerical purposes, postages, etc. But the major part of your registration fee is returned if you withdraw from the competition before the last date. So that is another important aspect about registration. Now, once the registration is complete and you have sent out the project brief and the conditions, etc., etc., for the competition, there's a certain time given within which all the competitors, they have to submit their drawings. Now, in a single stage competition, we usually expect all drawings like plans, sections, elevations, also site plans, and any other details which are essential. And it is imperative that every design entry which is submitted by the participant, it must contain what are the necessary number of drawings, and it cannot contain anything extra. So both what is required has to be submitted, what is not required cannot be submitted. All right. And in a two-stage competition, usually in the first stage, the promoters ask for only ideas. It is not detailed drawings. Again, these drawings are to suitable scales, etc., etc., sufficient to explain what is the intention of the competitor. And in a two-stage competition, once the entries are received, the first round of judging is done, and then the assessors select a smaller number of entries from the ones which are received, and then the second stage commences, where further details are given to only those which are selected, and then they, like limited competition, there is a next stage of the competition is conducted between the selected architects. Obviously, the selected architects are paid some honorarium, and then the final judging is done. Now, two-stage competitions are not so common unless the project is very large and complex. Most of the times, it is the single-stage competition which is more in use. Now, the role of the advisor becomes very important at this stage, because anonymity of every competitor is extremely important. So what do the competitors do? They do not write their names or company names or logos or anything on the drawing. They just select the 8 or 10 digit number which is stenciled or written on every drawing, and then in a separate envelope they will write their name and give details, and also write the number that they have selected. Okay. And this is submitted along with the entry. Now, what the assessors do is that they make a list of people with their chosen number, and that list is sealed. The next thing that they do is that they also allot a new 10-digit number to each competitor, and they make a second list which has in one column the number chosen by the competitor, and on the second column they give the number that they have allotted to the competitor. So there are two different numbers, and then these allotted numbers they make stickers, and they are stuck onto every drawing. So the number that is chosen by the competitor is not visible. The number which is assigned to him by the advisor, that is now visible on every drawing. And then this second list is also sealed in an envelope. So this ensures complete anonymity, because nobody knows which drawings belong to which architect. Then the advisor will ensure that there is a large space in which all the drawings are displayed. Okay. And the assessors are then allowed to look at the drawings for 1 or 2 or 3 days many times. When they go around and they choose, most of the times the process is that which involves elimination rather than selection. So initially, if there are, let's say, 40 drawings, then they will eliminate most drawings which they do not feel are suitable, every time making notes as to why is it that they're rejecting an entry. And in the end, they narrow down on a much smaller number, and then as a group they decide which is the winning entry, which is the runners up, which is the second runners up, things like that. So this is the method used for judging. And remember that the report of the assessors not only mentions who is first, who is second, who is third, but it must also say why certain entries are rejected. Now, one of the simple reasons for which many entries get rejected is they are not, they have not submitted all the necessary drawings, or sometimes some people change the competition conditions. Suddenly they say that even if the site is like this, we would like to increase, or we would like to do this, or they want a change in the bylaws or things like this, which are not acceptable, because it is in a competition, everybody has to be on the same level playing field. This is very important. So anything which is extra, which is outside the boundaries of the competition conditions, these entries are rejected, and the reason for their rejection is very clearly mentioned in the report. Here, suddenly, let's say that out of the assessors, let's say one of the assessors is unable to participate. Now, what do you do? So, for all meetings of the assessors, at least 2/3 of the assessors have to be present. Even if one assessor is not present, it doesn't mean that the entries are cancelled. Now, in two-stage competitions, sometimes what happens is that when the second stage starts, it is the same number of assessors, the same people who are assessing the second stage also. And there may be further queries that competitors may raise. Even in single stage competitions, it happens sometimes that competitors, during the process of making drawings, come out with certain queries. Now, such queries are answered, but they are not answered uh, individually one by one, but all queries are collected, they are answered, and then they are mailed to every competitor so that everybody gets the same information. In two-stage competitions also the same thing is done. Here in two-stage competitions, the role of the advisor is even more important, because it is quite likely that since there can be a gap of about, say, even 6 months between the first stage and the second stage, maintaining anonymity of different competitors and is very difficult, but it is the role of the advisor to ensure that that happens. Okay. As soon as the competition is over and the award is declared, there has to be a public exhibition of all entries, including those which are rejected. And this is kept open for public at large to see the entries for at least 3, 4, 5 days. The purpose is very simple, that if it's a project of public importance, the people also get to know what they are going to get in the end. But more importantly, the architects themselves who have participated can also see what others have done, and whether in the opinion of most architects the judging is fair. That's the important role that these public exhibitions. So after the end of the competition, all the drawings have to be exhibited for the public to see. Now, what is going to happen after the competition is complete? The board of assessors will give their result, and the payment of the prize money has to be done as per the result which is declared. And the person who wins the competition will have to be compulsorily given the project as an architect. Owner cannot say that now the competition is complete, I have given the money, prizes to everyone. Now I don't want to select the first guy, but I want the second guy to do the work. That is not allowed. Unless and until the first prize winner is in any way unable to perform the project. Suppose he withdraws, or he says, I cannot do the project, or there is some other reason for which the first prize winner is unable to do the project, only then they can consider, with the taking into account the opinion of the assessors, the second person or the third person in that order can be given the project. But in most cases, or in fact, as far as possible, it is the first prize winner who is always appointed as an architect. Secondly, sometimes if there are 2 or 3 designs which are almost of equal merit, then what the assessors do is that they declare a promoter's choice award. That means they say that there is no first, no second, no third, but these 3 people are of equal stature, equal merits, and therefore they take the money and divide it equally amongst the 3 people, prize money. And then they leave it to the promoter to choose one of the 2 or 3. This happens very rarely, but most architectural competition conditions will have a clause for a promoter's choice award also. Now remember, the money that is declared or the prices that are declared have to be paid. The assessors cannot say that there is no, they did not find anybody fit enough to have the first prize. That is not allowed. All the awards which have, or all the prizes which have been declared have to be awarded. Also, sometimes if the assessors feel that none of the entries is good enough, then they will have to cancel the competition totally and reorganize. Obviously, in such case, only the assessors and the advisor get paid for the services they have offered. Now, remember, in order to ensure anonymity, all the participants, they are forbidden from publishing their work in any media unless and until the competition has ended. While the competition is going on, you cannot publish your work because then that will compromise the anonymity. All right. Now, what will happen if after having given the award and after having appointed the architect, the promoter does not start the work? How does he get paid? So in such case, the architect will have to be paid 1% of the estimated cost if the project is not started, not completed, or if they do, let's say, partial project. Suppose the project was worth 100 crores and they will only do 50 crores worth work. They say we will only do this part. In that case, they will pay the architect the fees for the project which is executed, and for that part of the project which was not executed, the architect will have to be paid 1%. And if at a later date the project is taken up, then he is paid fees, but what is already paid to him for that part of the project will be deducted. Now, there are certain other conditions which are very important. One is insurance. You see, remember that the drawings which are sent by the competitors, once they reach the promoter, it is the promoter's responsibility to ensure that they are kept in a safe and safe manner, because they have to be returned after the end of the competition. And for this purpose, the promoters have to insure the entries against damage or loss by fire, floods, or things like this. All right. So ensuring the entries, drawings is important. Second, the competition timetable has to be stuck to. You cannot change the timetable. All right. And this is obviously declared in the beginning itself. And lastly, the return of all the drawings. After the completion of the competition, all the drawings, including those which, that are disqualified, have to be returned. Okay. What about copyright? Interestingly, the copyright for all the work which is submitted remains with the architects all the time. Even the promoter, once he, the first prize winner is awarded the job, he can only use that those drawings for that one project only. He does not own the design. The copyright for the design is still owned by the architect.